Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out on this wet day. I saw the trailer court around the corner down here. Boy, that road was flooded when people came off the main road there.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, for those who don't know me, my name is Lee Sky. L-E-E. Go outside and look up. That's my last name. I've been turning wood over 18 years, and I do it a lot. I've demonstrated at the AAW, the American Association of Woodturners Symposium, the Florida Woodturning Symposium. I've taught lots and lots of classes over the years. This August, I'll be at the Texas Woodturning Symposium. It's called SWAT. It's the third biggest symposium in the world. If anybody's going to be there, August 23rd, 24th, that weekend. You don't need to see me because I'm local, so you go see all the other demonstrators.
Where's it at?
Waco. And I'm going to do a demonstration on some wood turning basics. I'll be hollowing out this. I've been doing a bunch of cremation urns lately because people have been dying. And they're dying to get into my urns. This is one, Jerry. And anybody else, Ray Ryland, I was at his house on the way here. He told me to say hi to everybody who knows him and his wife. And I dropped off a pair of urns for him and his wife that he's going to carve on. He has to give them back because I'm threading the top and the wood still had moisture, so it needs to dry completely before I cut the thread on the lid to fit it properly. If there's any moisture at all, the wood will move and then the top's not going to fit. Just like a regular two-piece put together piece. And the Mounts Botanical Garden show, there was a girl about 22 that I had a little hollow vessel and she wanted to know if I could put a lid on it so she could use it for a little keepsake urn. And I said, well, I make those. So she commissioned me to make 4 keepsake urns. Here's one here. It's got a threaded lid. And I'm making extras because a client of mine, the husband just died and he was cremation, and that family wants 14 of these. So everybody can have a little piece of Walter's ashes. So we'll pass these around. The threaded lids, just put them on slowly and do not crank them tight. Just snug them up. Because I find it shows people thread it and then they crank that lid tight. That's why the tops broke off of this one. I can't get that out. Because everything in life that you unscrew and screw, you crank them tight, don't you? You can look at these. These are just little keepsake urns. None of them are really done because I'm just doing the bodies. So, wood turning basics. You need to know how to use the tools and how to apply the edge to the wood. A lot of tools that we have, they look different, but they all have one thing in common. They have a cutting edge. And if you really get down to it, applying the edge to the wood is very similar, even though the tools can look quite different. Now, this is a round nose scraper, and this is also a round nose scraper. And when you first buy one, they're usually only sharpened about that far like this one is. And to me, that's a waste. As you grind, this metal, as your tool gets shorter, is going to go away. And if you sharpen it all the way down here, you can use this long edge as a cutting edge. Like when you're going inside a box or something. You can rub it like that instead of trying to have the tool way over here to get a cutting edge. You can have it here, and plus you have a lot more edge that you can work off of. So all you got to do is just keep sharpening more on that left side. We have the parting tool and the Skew. They look kind of similar. If you look at them from the end on the screen there, you can see this is pretty much the same. This is a spindle roughing gouge. You only use this if your wood is lined up, the fibers in the wood, with the bed of the lathe. You do not use this if it goes across grain. It's very dangerous. You can break off the tang. But now let's look at this edge here. Can you zero that in closer? I'll find it. My technology is failing. I just came up with that. I forgot tape because I hate shirts with pockets. And that's a new invention I just invented. It keeps the chips out of my pocket. So,
Hold on better with a stapler.
yeah, thanks. You got one? I look on the desk. I didn't find one. If you look at the edge here, the profile, this angle to that angle, isn't it very close to what that is? And your skew. If you take a cross section of a ball gouge or a spindle gouge and look at it, it's almost exactly like that also, depending on the grinding bevel. Your scrapers are like that also. There's just more bevel. So I have a kind of a drawing here I did. Every one of these tools has a cutting edge. And this tool, the cutting edge is here. It kind of goes across like this parting tool. But the bevel angle can vary from very sharp like that to even up to 90 degrees. I've seen round nose scrapers and square nose scrapers where this was ground at 90 degrees. There's a slight concave from the grinding wheel, but the gentleman from Sorby factory, he used this side. When that got dull, he just flipped it over. It has the exact same tool on the other side. This is one of the most obtuse angles you'll get. It's a negative rake scraper. It's greater than 90 degrees, and you want to try and get a little burr curled up here. But my scrapers that I use are about this angle here. I don't know, it's 82 degrees or whatever it is, or 80. And a lot of scrapers I see with people are down like this or like that angle, and down here or here. And I find they're very aggressive, and that edge wears off really quickly. So if I have the angle up like this, which is more like this angle, as the wood is being cut off, this edge will do what I want it to do. It's not overly aggressive. If you're breaking the rules on where to hold it, you won't get as bad of nasty catch or dig in as you will with the long bevel like that. Plus the edge stays sharp a little bit longer. Now we have spindle turning. Now some other things that matter are what you're turning. If you're doing a lot of bowls, your bowl gouge should be about 45-ish degrees. Some people have it longer, like 60 degrees, and some people have them way out here, almost straight down, just to do from the bottom left corner to the center of your bowl. You use this one to come down the side of your bowl, and then when you transition, you could switch over to the other one with the more obtuse grind. That way you have to buy more tools. Well, my technology is failing here.
Has failed.
Has failed. Okay, spindle turning or in-grain turning. It's the same thing. That's if the fibers of the wood are lined up along the bed of the lathe. Once you rough it out with your spindle roughing gouge to make it round and true, you can do some shaping and some finishing cuts with this, but you only want to use this down at about a 40-degree angle. 45 is getting too much. If you're a new person, you get bad grabs and dig-ins. If the fibers are lined up along here, if it's flat, you can cut left or right. If you're doing a bead, you start from the top, down, top, down. Again, flat, either direction. If you're doing a cove, you go from the top, down, top, down. You can look at the green arrows here. You don't want to go down and then try and come back up. Can you do it? Yes. Other times you have to do it? Yes. But for the most part, you need to follow the green. On spindle turning in grain, you're cutting from larger diameter to smaller diameter. Larger to smaller, larger to smaller, larger to smaller. Come down, 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 down. The tools work better that way. If you come down and start going back up, you start digging the tool up under these grains, and it causes dig-ins and catches. Now, side grain or cross grain, that's with the fibers of the wood. See, this blank is in grain. The fibers go along like that. So if it's lined up this way on the lathe, we can use the spindle roughing gouge and all the other tools. If it's side grain going across the lathe, you do not use this tool. You use a bowl gouge. I've seen a lot of broken ones. A guy come into Woodcraft when I was teaching there with a broken one, and they thought it was a flaw. They gave him another one, and the next week he come in, that one was broke too. And then he broke a third one, and yes, sir.
Why not just use the bowl gouge both ways?
Exactly. Bowl gouge is a bigger, sturdier tool, has a round shank. It's very, very difficult to break unless there's a flaw in the metal. So I got the guy and I said, what are you doing? And he told me, I said, don't do that, you know, let's use your bowl gouge. So he was using it the wrong way. So side grain, we usually start off with the bowl gouge, and you can also use the spindle gouge on in grain or side grain. Spindle gouge has, you want a nice profile. Let me get it over here with the darker. Called a fingernail gouge, the shape. You want it kind of like a manicured lady's fingernail. Cindy, hold up your fingers.
Mine aren't that shape.
Oh, okay. Is it flat?
They're flat.
Okay. So you want your tool profiled nice and even on both sides. This half matches that half. You don't want any points or little hooks or dips on your blade. The side should be flat or a little bit convex, and it works. It reduces the amount of catches you get. Most of these tools you use rubbing the bevel. You want this gliding on the wood as you cut. Every single person in this room that's turned wood, and those of you who will, you're going to go and get just off the bevel. So that's where you start to lose control. It starts tearing up your wood. You get lines and valleys, and it starts digging in and vibrating. You need to have this gliding across the wood as you're cutting. Not only on the point, but around the edge here where your cut is actually taking place. I see people all the time using the gouges, and it's turned all the way over on the side like this, when actually the bevel rubbing cut, just because the bevel's rubbing here, and you're cutting from the point down to here, this isn't rubbing the bevel over like that. Your bevel is up here. That's where your cut is. You want the flute about 45 degrees or less. And if you bring it up, people are always coming in close, worried about hitting your tailstock. If you're actually up like this and you come down, this edge down here is going to hit that. You don't have to worry about your edge hitting this if you want to come close and stop. Now if you're doing a very shallow cut, just a finish cut, yes, you can turn this all the way on the side and it'll cut nicely. But if you come over here, you're dragging the wood across the cutting edge like that. What's that do to the edge? dulls it really fast. You're not quite doing a scraping cut, which is all the way over here. So, and that dulls this edge, so you need to get it back up here so you can see the curve coming down here. I'm touching the bevel here on that wood, but also right here, right there is rubbing the bevel. Over here, you can see under here, the bevel is not touching. And once you're right there, that cut is so fast and efficient, you've got to keep up to it. It just takes that wood right out. Plus, it gives you a smoother finish on this surface. You look puzzled, Marv.
No.
Okay. Oh, that your normal look? So, good that they did this on that lathe, because that shows it really well. So you can start your cut and be on there, but just remember not to turn it on the side. Will it cut? Yes. Will it cut well? Sometimes. But it'll cut better and cleaner. Your tool will stay sharp longer if you're cutting, rubbing this bevel, and if you're turned over and off that bevel. So you can see that pencil fits up under here, but the actual cut is down like that. You teach that in your class?
I'm learning.
Oh, good. and that's the bowl gouge. You also want this symmetrical. Now this angle was ground like this, pivoting. You can grind it just like this. It will not create this profile with these wings coming back, which are very helpful. Now once you understand the bevel and the scraping cut, okay, now using a scraper on the outside of my piece, I want the top edge pointing at dead center. So, or slightly below. A scraping cut okay, this is the bevel on the scraper. And in a scraping cut, typically you're not rubbing this bevel. So a scraping cut is about like that. The top surface where it touches the wood, you want 90 degrees or less. 90 or less. That is safe. On the outside, what does that mean? That means this line goes right to center. So I need to position the tool rest and where I want to hold the tool, pointing at center or slightly below. That way when it touches right here, it's 90 degrees or slightly less. That is safe. If I'm a little too high, that edge wants to dig into the wood. And that's risky, prone to catches and dig-ins. So on the outside, if you're too low, it's not going to be a problem. You just won't get any catches. If you're too high and not absolutely rubbing that bevel, anywhere between there and here, you get catches. It's the same thing with the bowl gouge and the spindle gouge. Okay, we've got a bevel rubbing cut and a scraping cut. This surface here, where it touches the wood, you want pointing at dead center or very slightly under for a scraping cut. Now if I hold the tool there and bring it over this way a little, all of a sudden I'm getting into that curve. That changes everything. So I need to turn the tool way over on its side, and on a bowl gouge, this side's ground a little different. You want the top cutting edge about 1/8 inch away from your wood. That way, this surface here, where it touches the wood, will be at 90 degrees or slightly less. If you open that up to about 1/4 inch, see this edge is now pointing above center. So I'm greater than 90 degrees. From here up to the bevel in that zone is risky, prone to catches and dig-ins. Now, most of the tools work well rubbing the bevel, cutting on the bevel, not out like that. The parting tool is one of the tools that won't give you bad catches if you break that rule. I see people all the time with the parting tool pointing right down here at dead center. It works a whole lot better if you lower your handle dramatically and get up here so you're almost rubbing that bevel. It'll cut a lot nicer. I mean, everybody I've ever taught does that, and I see it all the time wherever I'm turning. And you get it up here, and as it gets smaller, then you start raising your handle. It'll cut a lot better. Now, every tool we have, you can do a scraping cut, and you can do a bevel rubbing cut. Every tool. You just have to go about them different ways. Like a scraper, I can, I don't know if you see this here. I can touch it, pivot the top of the tool over about 45 degrees, make sure I'm rubbing the bevel on the wood, and come across with the scraper like that. You have to adjust your body to the profile of the piece. You can even do it on the inside of a piece. I do it a lot on in-grain bowls. Now, a regular bowl, you can have the fibers lined up side grain, or you can have them lined up in grain. And you have to cut them in opposite directions. The side grain, on the outside, you cut smaller diameter out to the larger. And from the rim towards the center. You may be starting in the center and doing that. In grain, outside, larger to smaller diameter. And if you follow these rules every single time, just like everything else, you check this, make sure it's tight every single time before you turn the lathe on. You spin that wood every single time. You're going to really reduce your problems. So in grain, on the inside, we need to drill a hole and come from the center out towards the rim. Here's another shot of the same thing. This is a side grain bowl with the wood grains going across, in grain where they're coming this way. A bowl gouge, we start here, scoop right to the center, scoop to the center, scoop. You just keep going until you match the inner profile with the outside. On in grain, you need to drill a hole down to almost your bottom depth, and you really should be cutting from that hole out towards the edge to follow the grain of the wood. How much time I got?
Page 35.
So 10 minutes. Now this just shows basically the same as that. The wood is rotating here, and I like to use my gouges above center. The guy who came down from Melbourne for a day in the shop with me, he was using the gouge down here like that. He lined up the tool rest so the point of his gouge is at the center, but he wasn't on bevel. Bevel is up here. So we need to get the tool up higher. As soon as I get out here and there's a little bit of space, that's when it starts digging and jumping, and you have to control. You have to hold it and prevent it from going into the wood. Scraper, same thing. Down here, if I'm doing a bevel rubbing, I don't normally do it with the tool flat on the rest. I usually turn it over about 45 degrees. There are specific scrapers for the profile of your pieces, one to go this way, one to go that way. But you can do them both with this one tool. Okay, I'm going to make a little bit of mess here now. I suggest everybody wear a dust mask whenever you're using any machinery that's going to create dust. Wood turning does not only make the big chips, it makes this little fine dust that just hangs in the air. Okay, I have a piece of camphor wood, a little bit smelly. I'm lining it up in grain. Some real safety glasses. And you need to use safety equipment all the time. New people, if something goes wrong, do not go backwards. That takes longer. It's real easy to go left or right. Get out of in front of this if you have a problem. Just so you're not right here. Just try that sometime, because I had a guy get blasted in the face. He had a full, good face shield on, but he went this way, and I was testing it, and that takes so much longer just to jump sideways, get your face out of the way. Real easy. Okay, so I have my gouge. That won't work too well,
Yeah, get a smaller one.
Okay, I have a spindle roughing gouge. This one does not have the long sides. So I want to pretend I'm rubbing the bevel. I want to line it up where the wood is spinning and I'll be hitting here. Now I could rough this out with my roughing gouge. I could rough it out with my spindle gouge. I could rough it out with my bowl gouge. I could rough it out with the skew. I could rough it out with a parting tool. Any of the tools we have. I could rough it out with a scraper. But some are more tuned to what you're doing. Yes, sir.
Is your pocket protected? Isn't there a rule with the skew, you really shouldn't use it over a certain size of tall piece of wood?
Yeah, about 3 inches in diameter. Yeah, the skew, there's about 4 things it can do really well, and I'm not including using it on the side as a scraper, like probably 90% of woodturners do when they use this tool. You use it up on an angle. You're cutting from the bottom half of the edge. You could come in and roll beads with the bottom corner. You can do some nice V-cuts with the top. You can shave down the side like that. You can do a nice peeling cut up in like this. And there's a few other things you can do with it, but we're not going into that today since I only have 7 minutes. We're at about 1,500 RPMs. My handle is down. Now all the tools, we need to hold it in a way which you can control. And if I'm out here just doing this with my arm, the end of that tool can move really fast and wiggly in all these different ways. If my arm is just resting comfortably, relaxed beside me, and I'm moving my body, I can still go up and down and pivot it left and right. But when I move my body, the end is so much slower and steadier and in my control. Plus, all these muscles aren't tensed. As soon as I go out that far, all these muscles come into play. And there's a lot of old guys in the audience, and what happens? You start to fatigue right away, and then you start shaking and wiggling. Even us young, good-looking guys, that happens. So, adjust the tool rest where you know the bevel is. I'm going to come in and touch the bottom edge here, not the cutting edge. Lightly raise out, get a chip, go to the right. Another thing with the tool next to you, my eye is always in the best spot to see where I'm doing. If I'm out here doing stuff, I maybe not can see it in the best way. Now that's a spindle roughing gouge. I can do the same thing with the bowl gouge. Run this out longer. Now, cutting down along the edge, we can use a lot of different tools for that. I can use a parting tool. It's how you apply the edge to the wood. See, this is a spindle roughing gouge. And I like to have corners on here. When I started, I didn't pay attention, was jabbing them in and getting catches, so I rounded them over. I use those corners like a parting tool, or like the point on a skew. So I can come over here and line it up, come down to a cut like that. I can use the parting tool, do the same exact thing. I can use the bowl gouge, do the same dang thing. I can use the square end scraper, do the same thing. Now I need to point it down. It's the same cut. I can even use the spindle roughing gouge, but with this long point, it's a little more risky. Okay? I can do it with the skew. You can do this with any tool we got. It's how you apply the edge to the tool, or to the wood. You're just positioning the tools, and the wood is cutting itself on your tool. Always touch the tool rest before you touch the wood. Right, Jerry? Yeah, I was going to put this in a chuck and hollow it a little, but due to time constraints. Now this angle is pretty much straight, so I can go left and right. Get a habit, new people, coming in low, touching the heel, raise up. As soon as you see a chip, you're on the bevel. Don't raise it any higher. You want that bevel rubbing. Will it cut off the bevel? Yes, this is off the bevel. If you can hear the difference in this cut and this cut, you can feel it. The chips are different. The surface is different. Now I'm using the tool straight on there, and that works nicely. If I use it like this, I get this little even curly chip. But what happens if I cock the tool over on 45 degrees? Now that edge is presented different. You get this really long, wispy, curly shaving, and it'll produce an even nicer, smoother finish up like that. And when you learn that and do it right with any of the tools we have, you can cut it and you can start and finish sanding with 400 grit. It's that smooth. If you got a really dense piece of wood, you may not even need to sand it. But the moment you get 1 degree off that bevel, everything changes. You're going to be getting lines and valleys and just all kinds of stuff going on. Doesn't that smell good? Okay, now we got what, 2 minutes? Now, if I wanted to do some grooves in here, I could take my parting tool, and new people also. See this edge here? If you felt that, it is very sharp, and there's a couple little chips on it, so it's like a steak knife. You touch that while the lathe's running, it will cut you right open. This takes a tenth of a second to remedy that. I can take the end of my parting tool, and now it's safe to touch. This upper edge here, that's the cutting edge, but this long edge here, I could come over sideways and just touch it like that and make that piece of wood. I got cut from here to here at one class I was doing because I bumped the guy's box lid on there and it just sliced me open. So that's all it takes to fix that. If I'm going to do a cove, I can do a start, come in with my spindle gouge or my bowl gouge. I'm going to start with my flute on my side, pointing at center. End up with the flute pointing straight up. On the side, top to the bottom, top to the bottom. To do a bead, I start opposite. I start with the flute pointing straight up. Start rolling to the side while I'm lifting. Same thing over on this side. Couple little cuts. And it's just, you need to develop an understanding of the tool, how you're applying the edge. Now the bowl gouge and the spindle gouge, when they're sharpened this way with the wings back here, you've got a cutting edge which starts here, goes all the way and ends here. Most of the time you're going to be just using right off the right or the left side of the point, and that'll get dull. But then I can bring the tool up. If the point is dull, I usually raise this so my tool can be more up on top. Now I'm using this long cutting edge back here. Get it up on top, roll it to the right. I don't think you can see it shining, but this wood is shining because it's polished and it's cut very nicely.
You mentioned that your tools are always very sharp.
Yeah, and they got to be sharp. You got to notice if you're working too hard, resharpen your tools. New people don't sharpen their tools enough. Up at West Palm Beach where they do their workshops every Wednesday night and I think Tuesday nights too. Every 20 minutes, Brian, who's the president of the club, all right, stop. Everybody sharpen the tool that's in your hand. So everybody has to go and resharpen their tool. And you get to notice right away, hey, this cuts really well. It's easier to control. I get a better finish when it's sharp. So you got to learn to sharpen the tools and then use them. And it takes practice. And you're not going to get it overnight. There's only one person I ever taught that they did everything the way I told them the first time, and they did it magnificently. That's my brother-in-law. He lives in Anchorage, Alaska. And he just went to town. But you also say to yourself, no matter how experienced you are, if you're trying something new, I can learn to do this. Because we've all learned things in life that were tough to learn at first. And you can learn to do this. Any other quick questions? Now you're still on cleanup duty, right?